Hello everyone, welcome to my annual M2 Shot Trigger Shmup review. This year's selection is the Toaplan Garage Tiger-heli Twin Cobra Collection Double Pack thing. I swear the naming conventions on these releases are getting worse and worse every single year. And this one is especially confusing because if you look at the back of the box or on the website and you're not already a Toaplan expert, it is a little bit confusing what exactly is included in this release. Is this a collection of a bunch of different Toaplan games and they just called it Tiger-heli? Why is it a garage? What is exactly happening? Well, to clarify, what you're getting are two distinct Toaplan games. The first one, Tiger-heli, and then its follow-up, Twin Cobra, or the Japanese title for Twin Cobra, which I will not attempt to pronounce. But that's basically what you're getting, are two distinct shmups, and then a bunch of different console ports of these two shmups. However, let it be known that for the base price of the $40, you are just getting Tiger-heli, Twin Cobra, Japanese Twin Cobra, and then the extras that M2 typically includes, but you are not getting the console ports. If you want the console ports, you need to pay the extra $20 for the DLC. So if you want the whole package, it's going to cost you around $60. And the tricky thing is, of course, this is a Japanese only release, so you need to buy the yen cards, and that's always a pain in the butt. And so it may come out to being a little bit more than $60 because of the yen card price purchase that you need to get. I would say just rounded to about $60 for all the content here. And so now what I want to do is preface this review with a little bit of perspective of where I'm coming from. That way the amount of misunderstanding is at least hopefully reduced. So when it comes to the M2 Shot Triggers team, I've been a very strong advocate and very strong supporter of all their releases. They've gotten glowing reviews from me. I consider them the best shmup porting team out there right now. And a lot of their releases, like the Battle Garega Revision 2016 port or the Ketsui Destiny port, I consider some of, if not the best shmup ports of all time. And so when you compare M2 to the landscape of other shmup developers out there, they're basically a straight A student in a class full of mostly idiots. And so every single year, the shmup that they announce is basically my E3. It is the release I am most excited for every single year. It's the thing I look forward to the most as far as game releases. Oh, what game are they going to release? Is it going to be Batrider? Hopefully we'll get Dodonpachi someday. And I did know that they were working on the Toaplan collection. Personally, what I was hoping for is seeing more of a collection, right? Especially of the later Toaplan games, the heavy hitters like Batsugun. And I do know that Tiger-heli has its fan base, so hang on there. But when it comes to this release, even if you are a huge fan of Tiger-heli and a huge fan of Twin Cobra and all that stuff, I feel like what has happened is you have a straight A student, and instead of handing in their usual A+ paper, they hand in like a B or like an A-. And it's still way better than everything else out there, so I can't necessarily say, oh, it's a bad release or anything like that. But when you compare it to their own library, so you compare it to the other M2 Shot Triggers releases, this is where it feels like it's a little bit more phoned in. There's just stuff that's missing or doesn't seem as fully fleshed out or as content rich as their previous releases. And this is the very first M2 Shot Triggers release that I bought that I've been a little bit on the fence about recommending. As far as basically, to get to the point of what I'm saying here, I'll get into the nitty gritty of my review. But the overall is that if you are a big fan of Tiger-heli and you are a big fan of Twin Cobra, you'll have no problems with this release because you're getting a lot for your dollar if you are a big fan of these particular shmups. However, if you're just a general shmup player or a player of bullet hell like myself or more intense shmups, I think you're going to be a little bit on the fence on whether or not you want to pick this up because it does feel a little bit underwhelming. So let's go over what exactly is included. I did not go forward and buy the whole $60 release because I didn't want to spend more money on these inferior console ports basically. So let's talk about the arcade releases because those are basically the heavy hitters. M2 is including all the good stuff that they include that does add a lot of value. So they have in-game replays, in-game leaderboards, they have custom mode, they have super easy mode, then of course the arcade mode with save states and all the great screen features. But there are a few small things with this release that seems like it's not as in-depth as the usual M2 treatment. For example, if you go into the options menu, typically you can change your auto fire settings to have all these different custom auto fires, which is really handy for stuff like Battle Garega. But in the course of this game, you just have this preset 30 Hz auto fire. you don't have a 15 hertz. And that's kind of an oversight, because what I ended up doing is using my built-in auto fire on my arcade stick for one shot, and then the other shot I used the 30 hertz option here. But I do think, compared to the other releases like Battle Garega, Ketsui, etc., where you had the ability to toggle, I think it's weird that they didn't include that here. So now you're just locked into 30 hertz, which isn't the best auto fire rate for the game, at least for certain situations. So that's a kind of a strange oversight. Another thing that I definitely missed here was any sort of arrange mode. They have custom mode, but custom mode is kind of a step in between arrange. It's cool, but it's not quite a full-on arrange mode. And the fact that they just have these 2 releases and no extra arranges, no extra soundtracks, again, compared to everything else, that's not a big deal because most other developers are not doing this. But compared to the M2 Shot Trigger's previous releases, they tend to include this. They tend to have extra soundtracks and arranges that really flesh out the gameplay. In fact, I can't think of an M2 Shot Triggers release that doesn't have an extra soundtrack of some kind or an arrange of some kind. So that's a pretty big disappointment. And so first we have the arcade mode. And of course, arcade mode is solid. It has save states. It has all that stuff you're looking for. But when it comes to the actual just arcade gameplay of these games, unless you are a big fan of tiger-heli and a big fan of this old school style shmup, 1943 style shmupping, I don't really get into it that much, because these early shmups, there's just some things that are really hard for me to get over. Like, of course, the massive hitboxes, the really simple level design, the crawling pace of the game where you're spending like 10 seconds just waiting for stuff to happen pretty frequently until you get into the later loops or whatever. No bullet ceiling. The movement of your helicopter is painfully slow. It just doesn't feel, for me anyway, that exciting to play. Though I do know, of course, that there are fans of this style of shmupping, so if you're into it, go for it. But if you're looking for something a little bit extra, I do like that they included the custom mode. And this was actually my favorite way to play the game, because in the custom mode settings, unfortunately it's in Japanese, the menus are in Japanese, so have fun trying to figure out what these settings are. And I do know you can try to Google Translate with your phone and everything, but I never really have a whole lot of luck with that, and it just comes out to be kind of weird gibberish, and then you basically have to just guess what the dip switches do. But I did end up figuring out that you can increase the ship speed, which is really nice and makes the game feel, yeah, okay, now we're playing. So my personal preference for playing this release is actually playing in the custom mode, jacking up the ship speed and letting it rock. Then it feels a little bit more fun, at least for me. But the problem with custom mode, though, is that I'm not exactly sure how the scoring leaderboards work for it, where if there's like a preset version of custom mode, or you just do whatever and then that goes on the leaderboard. I've always been sort of confused about the custom mode leaderboards of the M2 Shot Triggers games. And then also included is the super easy mode, and I do know a lot of people were big fans of the super easy mode because it does increase your ship speed. For me, I wasn't, because even though it is nice for the game to be a little bit easier, it just feels like the game is now even more slow as far as the pacing. You're just crawling along. So I wasn't really a big fan of super easy. I would say if you're wanting that fast ship speed, instead play custom mode. That's where the game starts to feel a little bit more fun. And then after that, they have this really cool arcade challenge, and I feel like this is where a lot of love and attention went into. And I do think that M2 do a great job on these arcade challenges, and they are really useful practice tools. They're basically like a ramped up training mode. The thing about it, though, is that I tend to just use save states because I find them a little bit more faster and efficient than doing the whole menus and all that sort of stuff. But if you're into looking for a nice training mode or a nice way to take bite-sized chunks of the game, and it has a rewind feature and everything, the arcade challenge is a really nice addition. So like I said, compared to a lot of other ports of games out there, M2 are still delivering way more than you typically get. It just feels like tiger-heli, it's like a little bit underwhelming, at least for me. Its follow-up, the second game included on the release, Twin Cobra. Now this game I actually enjoyed quite a bit more. The pace is definitely increased. The bullet count is definitely moved up. You actually have different bullets. Tiger-heli just has that one bullet basically. You have bosses now. Twin Cobra is definitely a step up over tiger-heli, and it is a lot of fun. You can actually start to feel like, okay, this is going a little bit more in that Batsugun, Donpachi sort of direction. And then also when you go into the custom mode of this and play with the faster ship speed, that's when you're like, okay, now it's feeling good. So I really enjoyed the custom mode of the Twin Cobra and its Japanese version. This is actually my favorite way to play the game, and I had a lot of fun. And it's funny because you can tell the game wasn't really balanced around you being able to zip around the screen so quick. Because if you change your weapon type to the green and you fly around, you can see it's like not spawning on your ship anymore, just spawns in the middle of the air. That's kind of funny. And speaking of the weapon types, from all the replays that I've been watching, it seems like the blue weapon type, if you're going for a score in arcade mode, just seems to be really good. All the high scoring replays that I watched were using the blue weapon type, which makes sense since the ship speed in arcade mode. But if you're less inclined to the methodical, slow-paced style shmupping that is the arcade mode, I do recommend playing the custom mode with your speed set up and maybe turning the rank up a bit, maybe getting it flowing a little bit faster. All of that is really cool. The online leaderboards are really useful. You can actually watch some replays of these games and get some ideas for how to route the levels and everything. Overall, if you are a fan of these two games, I do think it is still worth it. But I would say when you compare it to something like the Darius Cosmic Collection, because I think this is kind of the idea they were going for. Because if you look at the M2, not Shot Triggers, just M2 Darius Cosmic Collection, and compare it to the Toaplan Garage, you can see they're kind of transmitting that business model onto this release. But the problem is that the Darius Cosmic Collection has all these heavy hitters, and then this has just 2 games, right? And Darius Cosmic Collection has all these different games, even the baseline version, especially considering Darius Gaiden, which I would say is just a shmup worth a port in itself. Whereas I don't know if Twin Cobra or tiger-heli are quite worth the price, at least for me. And I could be off here, especially if you're a big fan of these older style of shmups. But I will say, as a fan of the M2 Shot Triggers team, had I not reviewed this and not done this review as I typically do, I'd probably be a little bit disappointed, a little bit regretting the money I spent, especially when I could pick up other shmup releases by the team, such as Esperade or in the Aleste collection, where those games are sort of equivalent to these early Toaplan shmups. They have that original shmup, the GG Aleste 3, which is actually really cool and an original game. So when it comes to the shmupping package overall, technically speaking, this is still a very solid release. I'm sure the performance is very close to what you get on the PCBs. The input lag seems totally fine. You have the save states, you have the arcade challenge, you have the custom mode, all great additions. Of course, online leaderboards. The included art is also really cool and helpful for making thumbnails. But it just seems a little bit like M2 Shot Triggers phoned it in. I'm hoping this is just a little bit of a speed bump and that their next release will be really slamming, you know, Batsugun or something really cool like that. What I'm not hoping is happening is that every year we just get these tiny little double packs of old Toaplan games until they finally make their way through the library 4 years later, and then maybe we'll get a Batrider or maybe we'll get a Donanpachi. But before I close out this review, I also have to talk about the extra included game that they put in, which is this puzzle game. And no, I know what you're thinking. Oh, Ikaruga? Did they include Ikaruga? No, it's actually not Ikaruga. At first glance, it gets a little bit confusing. You know, the things are falling down. I'm like, oh, is this Ikaruga? Wait, no, it's a puzzle game. Speaking seriously though, they did include this odd puzzle game for free, which kind of reminds me of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but not as good, unfortunately. So if you're a fan of puzzle games, I'm not even sure how good this one is. It seems kind of jank, to be honest. But yeah, they decided to include it. It seems like a really weird inclusion because they don't give you the DLC for free, but they give you this random puzzle game for free. And I think what likely happened is M2 got the license for these Toaplan games, and they had this random Toaplan puzzle game. And they're like, okay, what the hell do we do with this? Let's just throw it in, probably. So nothing against it or anything, but it's not going to push me over the line and being like, yes, they have the puzzle game in there. That's definitely worth it. So this is pretty much everything I have to say about the release. I would say a cautious recommendation, depending if you're a big fan of these early Toaplan shmups. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, get yourself notified, recommend to your friends, and also check out the Reddit. I'm going to soon start posting some exclusive articles and stuff on the Reddit to add some extra content on there. So definitely be sure to get on there and check that out. Thanks so much, everyone. Adios. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Ukshay Wadkar, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Anthony Iodice, Aaron Solis, Ben, Borgie22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Chris Yuzefovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Danielle Savage, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Staslea, DJ420 Praise It, Dubs, Entropy, Eric H, FCK, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Geriatric Don Maku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kikoman 589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Matthew Ebersviller, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minung, Mechalin, Mitchell Y, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Rattlecat, Raul, Real Skeen, Shane Sintiensky, SLW, The Boot Rex, The Real Ikuzo, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, Plasmo, Twilight EX, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.